we're going to be going over all 4 Redfall characters, including their abilities, their play style, the lore behind their character, as well as some voice lines that I'm going to pull from a few trailers, as well as how they conform to support, damage, and mobility roll. So let's just jump right into it. What's up, world? Here back in the video, and today we're checking out all things Redfall. Okay, so first up we have Layla Ellison. Now Layla moved to Redfall to study biomedical engineering at Redfall Technical University. She volunteered for a medical trial by Avium Therapeutics research facility that ended up badly but left her with telekinetic abilities. So yeah, she's a med student who seems pretty smart, who just had a bad experience with some sort of medical contraption or whatever happened, and it left her with these incredible abilities. And she does wield telekinetic abilities, which do visually appear as a purple force field that help her to defense and be engaged offensively. Now her first ability allows players to stomach a telekinetic lift to climb high places, rooftops, terrain, and obstacles, which leaves her for a great spot to be the perfect sniper or get over the edge to kind of see where mobs are at. She also has an umbrella ability. This telekinetic skill shields Layla and her team from incoming projectiles. With the physic umbrella shield skill, she'll be able to create protective shield in front of her that can block incoming damage and then reforge that force field to send a high damage projectile back to her enemies. It's kind of like a Reinhardt type of playstyle, but she can also send back this nice like pulsating shield that you'll see here. Now she can also summon a vampire ex-boyfriend, which is an ability that summons a powerful companion to help her in combat. So she'll almost have like a little pet to use that she can bring with her in combat. So she's definitely like almost kind of like a tank, but she has high mobility and she is more of a support class overall. Here are some of her voice lines, and I will say before that she was featured in a lot of trailers, so you might have heard a lot of Layla. She was like kind of like the premiere for the promotional material. She was definitely like the main character for them. So you might have heard it a bunch already, but there should be a few that you haven't here.
2 quick questions. Why are you doing this? And why am I first? We can thank Avon for that. Well, me and my ex were out seeing a movie. We're friends. It's a whole thing. I hid out at the university until it was safe to try for the ferry.
And Jason?
Spoilers, Dev. You'll see. Anyway, fun interview.
Moving on to Devinder Crosley, he is a cryptozoologist and an inventor who has spent years making technology to trap and detect the presence of supernatural activity. His beliefs landed him on the island of Redfall, which are plagued by vampires, obviously, and he documents and fights off these undead creatures using his invention while he also uses his abilities. So yeah, he's a brilliant inventor and author who's always interested in the supernatural and weird stuff. He is called the Verified Cryptid Hunter. He fights using inventions that he made and weapons that provide a unique vampire playstyle. Now his first ability is Translocate. His character can throw one of the devices which will teleport you to a location that gives you an advantage in combat, so you can quickly move to help your allies or sneak up on enemy. He's definitely reminiscent of like a Blink class or a class that can teleport to different locations, kind of get the edge on certain things, almost reminiscent of like a Widowmaker, kind of more so, but not really. He also has an arc javelin that he can throw down on enemies and surfaces which can attach and emit a lightning attack to deal big damage. You can upgrade to increase the electric pulse range and damage more enemies at once. Kind of like a nice little AoE thing. It is stationary, so once he plants it down, it's going to then send down that AoE effect. He also has a backlight, which has been modified camera that emits a UV light, which can petrify vampires and enemies within its range. It can be upgraded for healing and to increase the radius and effect in the duration. He's got a nice little heal here. Definitely seems like a more of a support class, even more so than Layla, as he's got a lot of things that kind of CC control mobs. Although he does put out a decent amount of damage, especially with things like Arc Javelin and the Backlight both doing damage and also healing. I would say it's mostly primarily a DPS CC class with a little bit of support. And here are some of his voice lines.
Hey, that's delicate equipment. The crowd at the signing was quite large for a town this size. But the fame isn't the point. I want to show people that the world they imagine isn't that far from the one they know. Of course, Mom and Dad didn't approve. So I had to make my own way, and with limited resources, I had to improvise my own equipment. Self-taught, I'm proud to say. I want to show people what I've seen, to watch their eyes light up, like a kid on their birthday. Well, no one's seen one before, have they? Speaking of, I need to look at the specimen.
Now next up we do have Remy de la Rosa. She's a combat engineer. She uses her knowledge as a robotic expert and coastal guard to protect citizens and her teams from vampires and cultists. During her job in many travels, she designed Bribin, a highly advanced robot designed to be a decoy and cover and attack all drones in one area. Her first ability is a C4 charge ability, sticky C4 charge that explodes remotely, dealing AoE damage to enemies, and thus can be used in open combat or as traps for vampire patrols. She also has a mobilize ability that's typically an AoE healing ability, but it can also revive anybody in its area. Like this thing that she puts down, and it's like they said, it's kind of like a power plant, basically this thing that will generate health and will also revive any allies probably within that circumference. She also has a siren ability, and this belongs to the actual robot, which is Bribin. Players can order the robot to go to a specific location, create loud noise that can distract enemies, lure them, and it can also take on defensive posture so it can survive the additional damage. I'm assuming that the robot would probably be stationary at that point when it takes that defensive point. Yeah, she's played to be aggressive in close range, although I would consider her more of a kind of AoE heal support class still. Although seemingly a lot of these classes do have the kind of seemingly the support stuff. But here are some of her voice lines.
Everyone deserves a break, even be wrong. Let's make it quick then. Oh, come on. Password?
Espelioja.
Thanks. Let me see that leg. It looks... Actually, we have a few questions for you.
Now last up we have Jacob Boyer. He's an ex-military and special force unit sharpshooter with an extreme sharp eye and exceptional war and weapon knowledge. He's an incredibly dangerous player on the battlefield. Now his first ability is a Raven, and he can instruct his Raven to locate and mark nearby enemies. And if it's upgraded, the Raven can be used to destroy enemies in its path as well. He also has a cloak ability which can trigger the Bellweaver cloak that has a power to hide you from enemies. If the cloak is upgraded, then the duration will increase, and you can also loan your power of invisibility to your friends. So another nice little AoE ability. He also has Heartstopper. You can summon a supernatural rifle that uses sight to mark enemies and deal lethal damage to them. If upgraded, the duration and damage is increased. You will also be able to eliminate targets through barriers like walls. And this one does seem pretty good, this last ability here, because I did notice that you had to put up a stake to the mobs if you wanted to completely down them. So to know that this is like a lethal ability that will actually take them out completely maybe alleviates the need to be up close. This guy seems to be the actual massive damage dealer, as he doesn't really have a support ability aside from cloak, but it's not a heal. So I would consider this a full DPS class. And here are some of his voice lines.
It's okay. Not like there's anything else going on. All you want to know is what happened that night, right? It was just a job. Bellwether sent us on a standard recover and burn up private military contractor. You don't ask questions, and they don't answer. But we were ambushed by something. I think we're done here, Div.
And they should about cover it for all of the characters and their abilities and kind of sort of their playstyle, as well as their lore behind a bunch of different things. And I will have a list of time zones that this game is launching, because it is launching tonight actually. So if you didn't know about that, it is launching tonight, not just tomorrow. So it should be tonight depending on your time zone. If you're in America, it'll be tonight. And it's sooner than midnight release is what I mean. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Central time, and 5 p.m. Pacific time. But again, I'll have a bunch of time codes down below, and I'm also going to feature a map that showcases the global release times. Also, if you haven't noticed already, there isn't really many reviews out there right now, and the reason being is because the embargo doesn't drop till technically after the release time. Although I've heard a few mixed things that it drops with the release day, although usually embargo drops a day before, but this game is dropping a day of. You probably won't see any reviews till later tonight or till when the launch day is, but that does about cover for today's video. And if you like it, and subscribe, and until the next one. Deuce.